Rain fell in thin, needling sheets, turning the cemetery into a grayscale painting. Mud clung to Liam's shoes as he walked, each step heavier than the last. Ahead, a cheap pine coffin sat suspended over a gaping hole in the earth. No flowers, no wreaths, just three people standing in the downpour. A priest flipping impatiently through his Bible, a social worker checking her watch, and Liam, fists shoved deep into his jacket pockets. This is how it ends. A pair of gravediggers lurked under a distant oak, smoking, waiting. One of them chuckled at something, the sound carrying like a gunshot in the hollow silence. The priest cleared his throat. Henry Mercer was a quiet man. Dashed a pause. Does anyone wish to speak? Wind whistled through the headstones. The social worker shook her head. Liam opened his mouth, but what was there to say? I barely knew him. He never called, never wrote. 12 years since he'd last seen the old man. 12 years of unanswered letters, of phone calls that rang into void. And now this. A voicemail from a hospital social worker. Your grandfather's gone. A rustle of fabric. The lawyer appeared at his elbow, umbrella-less, water dripping off the brim of his hat. He pressed a cold, tarnished key into Liam's palm. The house is yours, and whatever's inside it, a beat. He said you'd understand, Liam's fingers closed around the key. It bit into his skin. Understand what? The lawyer's mouth twisted. That some secrets cost more than money, Behind them, the coffin creaked as the gravediggers lowered it into the ground. The rope groaned. The priest muttered or rushed him in. Then a sound. A cough. Liam turned. At the cemetery gate, a hunched figure in a sodden overcoat watched. Their face was shadowed beneath a wide-brimmed hat. For a single, suspended second, Liam felt the weight of their stare, like a hand reaching into his chest and squeezing. Then they were gone. The priest snapped his Bible shut. Well, that's that. The first shovelful of dirt hit the coffin with a sound like thunder. Liam didn't move. The key burned in his hand. Somewhere beyond the cemetery walls, an engine roared to life. Tires spat gravel. And just like that, he was alone with the dead. The key turned with a scream of rust. Liam shouldered open the door to Henry's house, and the smell hit him first. Dust, mildew, the sour tang of old whiskey seeping into floorboards. The air hung thick, like the house had been holding its breath for decades. A single bulb swayed from the ceiling, casting spider-legged shadows across peeling wallpaper. The floor groaned under his weight. This is where he lived? Empty bottles lined the kitchen counter. A moth-eaten armchair faced a silent television, its screen cracked. On the coffee table, a single framed photo, face down. Liam flipped it over. A family. Himself, no older than 6, squinting in sunlight. His mother, smiling. And Henry, younger, but already with those same tired eyes, standing stiff beside them. Liam's throat tightened. A creak from upstairs. His head snapped up. Silence. Just the house settling. He told himself, just the wind. But the air prickled against his skin. He moved through the living room, fingers trailing over dust-caked surfaces. A bookshelf leaned precariously, stuffed with yellowed paperbacks. Liam pulled one free, The Great Gatsby, and a slip of paper fluttered out. Behind her, he turned. The faded family portrait on the wall, him and his mother at the beach. Henry's face had been carefully cut out. Liam's pulse thudded in his ears. He lifted the frame. The safe stared back. Old, cast iron, its dial crusted with age. The key fit perfectly. The lock clunked. The door swung open, and Liam's world tilted. Bundles of cash, bound with brittle rubber bands, a leather ledger, its pages stained the color of old blood, and a newspaper clipping, crisp as the day it was printed. Local accountant linked to Bianchi crime family. Beneath the headline, Henry, flanked by men in sharp suits. One of them had his hand on Henry's shoulder, smiling like a wolf. A click, a hiss of static. Liam spun. A tape recorder, hidden in the safe shadow, word to life. Henry's voice, cracked with age and fear, filled the room. If you're hearing this, they killed me. Don't trust anyone, especially not. A crash upstairs. The tape cut off. Liam froze. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate. Coming down the stairs. The courtroom sat still, but Maria's mind, it moved, not in the now, but back to the nights no one here would ever see. The lights overhead blurred for a moment. The baby nestled deeper against her chest, and in that second, everything rewound. Flash. A greasy diner kitchen, stainless steel clanging, plates piled, steam rising from a broken dishwasher. Maria, hair tied back, apron stained, balanced 3 plates on one arm. Her feet ached, her wrists burned. Her shift had ended an hour ago, but no one had shown up to cover. She stayed, because overtime meant formula, meant bus fare, meant one more day in the apartment. Flash, the dim glow of a nursery lamp. Not even 3:00 a.m. The baby whimpered, body burning with fever. Maria pressed a cool cloth to her daughter's forehead with one hand, held a medical bill in the other. The ink blurred behind exhausted tears. Her phone screen lit up, a text from her boss. If you're late again, don't bother coming dash. She stared at it, then back at her baby. She chose her child. Always. Flash. The front door. A folded eviction notice wedged between the handle. Final warning. Maria read it 3 times, then sat on the floor, back against the door frame, and stared ahead. No tears, no screams, just silence. Her baby slept in the next room. That sound mattered more than anything else. The flashes faded. Back in the courtroom, Maria blinked, breathing carefully. They didn't know. None of them knew. Not the opposing lawyer, not the bailiff checking his watch, not the landlord who hadn't even looked her in the eye. They didn't know what it took to get here, how she balanced bottles and court papers, how she memorized eviction codes while rocking a child to sleep, how she stitched together dignity from the torn edges of survival. Her eyes drifted to the judge, still silent, still unreadable. But his gaze, it wasn't mocking. Not anymore. Maria held her child closer, gently brushing a thumb across her daughter's forehead. This courtroom saw a woman in wrinkled clothes, a tired face, a late rent check. But that wasn't the story. The story lived in the spaces between feedings, between jobs, between judgments. And maybe, just maybe, it was time someone finally heard it. Judge Harlan leaned forward slowly, his fingers steepled just below his lips. The murmurs in the courtroom faded. His voice was firm, but curious. MS, Cortez, why did you bring your child here today? The question rang like a bell in the chamber. Maria sat straighter, blinking once, twice. Her heartbeat roared louder than the whispers ever had. She looked up, not at the lawyer, not at the crowd, but directly at the man behind the bench. Her lips parted. No sound came. The baby stirred softly in her lap, letting out a quiet sigh. That sound steadied her. She breathed in, then answered, Because I couldn't afford a sitter, Dash. The words were plain, honest. But then her voice grew firmer. And because I refused to leave my baby behind, not in a courtroom, not in life, not when she's all I have left, Dash. She didn't cry, but her eyes shimmered, glassy beneath the fluorescent lights. You could feel it then, a shift. The opposing attorney glanced down, suddenly avoiding her gaze. A woman in the gallery lowered her phone. The bailiff, arms folded, tilted his head just slightly. Even Judge Harlan blinked, slower this time. Maria continued, her voice trembling only on the edges. I've worked every hour I could get. I've paid what I could. When I could, my partner left without warning. The baby was sick, and the landlord, he never returned my calls. I'm not here to make excuses, Dash. She cradled her daughter tighter. I'm just here to be heard, Dash. A beat of silence, then another. It was the kind of quiet that wasn't empty, but full, charged, the kind that lands in the chest like a stone. Her baby, impossibly still now, stared up at the courtroom with soft, curious eyes. And in that moment, she wasn't the punchline anymore. She was the proof that strength doesn't shout. Sometimes it just shows up, holding a child, standing alone, speaking when silence might have been safer. Judge Harlan sat back in his chair. He didn't speak right away. But something in his posture, the softened brow, the shift of his jaw, told Maria the question had never really been about the baby. It had always been about the mother. And finally, someone had listened. The silence returned. But this time, it wasn't mocking. It was reverent. Judge Harlan looked down at the open file on the bench, his glasses low on the bridge of his nose. He didn't turn the page. He didn't need to. Instead, he lifted his eyes not to the paperwork, but to the woman holding her baby as if the world depended on her arms. He cleared his throat. I see, he said, voice low, even. His eyes softened. And this child, is she fed? Cared for? Safe? Maria didn't hesitate. Her chin lifted, her voice sure. Yes, Your Honor, always, she's my whole world, Dash. The baby blinked slowly, nestled in her mother's arms. A small hand clutched a faded fabric strap from the diaper bag, innocent, trusting, entirely unaware of the weight pressing against her mother's chest. A pause followed. Not because the judge was unsure, but because he wanted the moment to land. Then he spoke, not with judgment, but something that sounded like awe. Then you're doing more than most, Dash. A few gasps fluttered through the room. Even the opposing lawyer's pen stopped moving. Maria's breath caught in her throat. No one had ever said that to her before. Not the landlord who hung notices without knocking. Not the manager at the diner who docked her pay when her sitter canceled. Not the people who stared as she bounced her baby on one hip and paid with crumpled bills at the pharmacy. But now, in a courtroom full of strangers and murmurs and quiet assumptions, someone saw her. Really saw her. The judge leaned back slightly, removing his glasses. This court isn't here to punish people who keep trying, Dash. He looked over at the landlord's attorney. We're here to protect what matters, Dash. Maria's fingers curled around the baby's back, grounding herself in that one small truth. Her daughter cooed again, soft, musical, a lullaby in a room built for verdicts. And just like that, the air changed. No longer thick with whispers, now filled with quiet respect. Even the smirking woman near the door lowered her gaze. Even the bailiff shifted his stance. Even Maria sat taller. Because in a place where judgment echoed off wood-paneled walls, a single sentence had done what no gavel could. It had restored dignity. The courtroom held its breath. Maria didn't move, couldn't. Her baby shifted against her chest, fingers gripping the collar of her faded sweatshirt. Judge Harlan glanced once more at the file in front of him, then closed it with a quiet thump. His expression, unreadable just moments ago, softened with finality. "The court has reviewed the documentation," he said, voice steady, and determined that the eviction notice served to Ms. Cortez was legally insufficient. Proper notice was not given. The case is dismissed. A collective exhale rippled across the benches, shock from some, relief from others. Maria's heart stopped for a beat. Dismissed. The word didn't just end a legal case, it unlocked the chain of fear that had wrapped itself around her since the letter first landed at her doorstep. The eviction, the threat, the impossible choice between feeding her daughter or paying a lawyer. It was over. But the judge wasn't done. He looked directly at Maria, not down at her, not through her. At her. "Ms. Cortez," he said, "I hope this courtroom remembers something today. The silence stretched again, a different kind this time, listening silence. He removed his glasses, resting them on the desk with care. "Strength," he said slowly, "doesn't always wear a tie." Murmurs rose, not in mockery this time, but in quiet agreement. The opposing lawyer looked down, fiddling with a pen. The landlord shifted in his seat. Maria blinked rapidly, eyes stinging. She couldn't speak, not yet. But her daughter did. A small sound, bright, soft, spontaneous. The baby gurgled, then giggled. It echoed off the wooden walls like applause. The judge cracked the faintest smile. Maria's shoulders finally released, sinking back into the seat, her body trembling not with fear, but with exhaustion and something even rarer, peace. The bailiff motioned for the next case to prepare, but no one moved. People were still watching Maria this time, not with ridicule, but respect. She rose slowly, held her child a little tighter, and walked out of that courtroom not as a tenant begging for mercy, but as a mother who stood her ground. She didn't yell. She didn't fight. She simply showed up, weary, worn, but unshakable. And in the quiet strength of her love, the system saw something too often forgotten: humanity. The courthouse doors groaned open behind her, spilling sunlight into the sterile hallway. Maria stepped out, squinting slightly, the brightness blinding after hours beneath flickering fluorescent lights. Her baby nestled against her shoulder, warm and safe. Tiny fingers gripped the collar of her shirt like a lifeline. The world outside hadn't changed. The sidewalk was still cracked. The sky still wore its dull gray, but something in her had shifted. She no longer walked like someone carrying shame. She walked like someone who had stood her ground and was still standing. A few reporters hovered nearby, their cameras lowered but ready. One stepped forward, a young woman with a clipboard and kind but cautious eyes. "Ms. Cortez?" she asked. Maria turned, unsure. The woman continued, gently, "I just wanted to ask, after everything today, aren't you angry? At how they treated you? At the way people laughed?" The question hung in the air like a weight waiting to fall. Maria didn't answer immediately. Instead, she looked down at her daughter. The baby had fallen asleep, soft lips parted, tiny breath rising and falling, so peaceful, so unaware of courtrooms or rent notices or the word eviction. Maria exhaled, slow and steady. I'm not angry, she said, voice low but sure. Let them judge Dash. She met the reporter's gaze now, calm and unwavering. I'll keep showing up, she said, brushing her baby's cheek with the back of one hand, because that's what mothers do, Dash. A long pause. Then the reporter lowered her mic. No follow-up, no soundbite. Just a nod. Maria walked on. Past the cameras. Past the whispers. Into the afternoon light, one step at a time. A mother. Unapologetic. Unshaken. Unforgettable.